As you might be able to hear from that accent, I am British and I have no business at all telling you which way to vote. You wouldn't listen anyway. What the hell do I know about your life? But what I want you to do now is simply to reflect on what I'm about to say to you before you make your decision tomorrow. Because I want to remind you of something. I want to remind you that whilst I have no business telling you how to vote, neither does anybody else. The principle in democracies is that you vote according to your own self interest, how well you are doing, how attached you are to the candidates, and whether or not you think you will be better off in the next 4 years. But the radical left doesn't understand that. They refuse to. They don't believe in democracy, and they don't believe in America. They demand that you vote the way they decree, even if it's opposed to your own self interest. It's a sacrifice they require you to make, not them. They'll say that you're a racist if you don't vote the way they tell you to, whilst telling black people they're not really black if they don't support Joe Biden. They will say you're a fascist if you don't vote the way they tell you to, whilst hand waving away huge bodies of evidence of voter fraud. They will call you violent if you don't vote the way they tell you to, whilst themselves supporting violent mobs, looting and burning businesses. The mainstream media, who should be scrutinising these arguments and holding them up to the light for close examination, instead does nothing but amplify these dangerous beliefs and present them as fact. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, can't it? Sometimes you think to yourself that you're the only sane person in the world. Sometimes you doubt your own reality, you doubt your own two eyes. It happens to us too. Don't worry, there's no shame in it. It happens to many people. And when you go to the polling station tomorrow, ask yourself, which way should you vote if you're considering your own interests? If I might, I'd like to help remind you. Donald Trump, statistically speaking, made you more likely to be in employment and he made you and your family richer, especially if you belong to a racial minority. He promises to deliver more of the same in the next 4 years with low taxes and an aggressive policy towards nations that undercut the United States. Joe Biden was vice president in an administration that intensified inequality and left many desolate. If Joe Biden did a good job, Donald Trump would not have become president. He promises to raise your taxes and make it more difficult for business to operate in America. Donald Trump spent the last 4 years, never mind the last 4 months, answering every question about him under the most intense scrutiny and ended up proving the Russia hoaxes wrong. In every debate, he answered the questions put before him. Joe Biden is a man who gets angry when asked harsh questions by journalists. He threatened to curtail access to the White House for critical journalists. He relied on his big tech friends to hide a story about his son, and he dodged every single question put to him over the course of the campaign. On the debate stage, he would ignore the questions, he would look to the camera, make bizarre demands to go and vote. Donald Trump loves America with a passion. He has a great respect for the Constitution and considers the Supreme Court sacred and untouchable. And we still don't know whether Joe Biden will pack SCOTUS or not. He considers America to be a land of intolerable oppression, where the only path forward is a radical redistribution of wealth from the most successful to the most disadvantaged, and he sees the Supreme Court as a vehicle to do that. Donald Trump gave up his billionaire celebrity lifestyle to be nothing short of hated by the entire country. Joe Biden enriched himself. He demands his son gives him 50% of his earnings from crooked dealings with America's greatest enemy, and this potentially taking place during his term as vice president. The fact is that tomorrow, you are going to have to make one of the most important political decisions ever, because your choice determines not just the fate of the United States, but the entire Western world. The next president of the United States will determine whether the West is able to resist China or whether we crumble in the face of their vast economic power. The next president will determine whether those who love the West and the traditions of democracy and equality and the rule of law are in ascendancy, or whether those who hate the West and denounce it as an imperialist construct are in the ascendancy. No one has the right to tell you how to vote. Not the radical left, not the mainstream media, not arrogant rich liberals and ivory towers in cities far, far away from you, and certainly not a Brit halfway across the world. Not the rioters who attack and steal and loot and kill. Not the critical race zealots who claim all white people are racist. Not AOC and the squad. Not Bernie Sanders and not the news anchors at CNN. It's only you who can decide. Remember what Donald Trump has done for you as you go to the polls tomorrow and make your decision based off that. Will you continue with 4 more years of economic prosperity and a tough foreign policy that challenges a norm that works for nobody? Will you grant the champion of the Rust Belt the chance to continue his economic miracle? Or are we willing to give the leadership of the Western world to Joe Biden, a man who hates it? Are you willing to hand the power to make your life better or worse to Joe Biden? The choice is yours, but the responsibility is great. Choose wisely, and God bless.
This election is one of the most important in modern history. So let's take a real look at who would be the best candidate, not just in the interest of the US, but for the Western world as a whole. Do not let your vote be dictated and influenced by institutions who have an agenda. They're not concerned about you, they're concerned only for their own motive. Let's think about what we know to be true instead of what we're told to be true. Who has the best record? Who has shown they're capable of leading? The president is not called the leader of the free world lightly. These words mean something, and they mean something now more than ever. Joe Biden has served in public office for 47 years. He has an extensive record that we can judge him on. He was first elected as a senator in 1972. This is his third run for president. In 1988, he dropped out of the race in embarrassing fashion after being caught plagiarizing his speeches and personal experience. In 2008, he withdrew in January with 0 delegates. This man is not popular even with Democrats. He won the nomination this time round after being unanimously endorsed by all the moderate candidates, but only in an attempt to stop the more popular and left-leaning ones from winning. In Biden's 39 years as a senator, his magnus opus, his crowning achievement, was the 1994 crime bill. Biden recently called that crime bill a mistake. Think about that. In his 47 years in government, he called his most significant contribution to public office a mistake. Biden claims he will be the president of all Americans, but every time he confronts those who oppose him, his actions show otherwise. When asked why Republicans should vote for him, he said they shouldn't. He referred to Trump supporters campaigning outside his rallies as chumps and ugly folks. The most egregious of all his comments are those directed to minority communities. Biden has referred to African Americans who don't support him as not black. He used the term poor kids synonymously with African American kids. These fraudulent slips are telling of a man who shows contempt for the American people. He pays lip service to everyone, telling energy workers in Pennsylvania he supports fracking. The next day, he tells environmentalists he wants to ban it. These are the actions of a man who represents an embodiment of the establishment, a member of the political elite who cares more about winning for themselves and less about winning for the American people. To describe him in one word, it would be expedient. Like a well-trained dog, he will say what he thinks others want to hear and expects something in return. This time, to hold the highest office of the land. Robert Gates said in his memoirs, Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades, and he's right. Biden supported the Iraq War and later claimed he was against it. He opposed the raid to kill Osama bin Laden, Obama's biggest win as president. The pulling out of troops in Iraq led to the rise of ISIS. The disastrous intervention in Libya led to a migrant crisis that still plagues Europe to this day. And the failures of Benghazi show an inability to protect Americans overseas. But above all else, Biden's views on China are the most terrifying for us all. He claims China is not a rival of the United States, but instead relegates them to a mere trade competitor. The rise of China creates an existential threat to Western values and our way of life. Many of us are privileged to have lived only during a time when the West are able to reign supreme in the geopolitical battlefield of waging ideologies. But imagine a scenario where China is able to influence how we run our sovereign nations. That scenario is ever more likely with a leader of the free world who doesn't recognize the amount of power that China will have if we continue to ignore them. And we have Donald Trump. He's offensive, he's arrogant, egotistical, rude, somewhat narcissistic. He's unpresidential, they say. But we don't support Trump for his character in spite of his policy. We support him for his policy in spite of his character. In his 4 short years in politics, Trump's foibles have not stopped him from delivering one of the greatest economies America has seen. Through tax and regulation cuts, Americans have achieved record unemployment with minorities, stock market highs and wage increases. 56% of Americans told Gallup they're better off now than 4 years ago. Better off now than 4 years ago while in the midst of a pandemic. He has restored the courts to an originalist balance, appointing over 200 judges and 3 justices to the Supreme Court who will apply the law as written in the Constitution and not create new law through the lens of their own bias, bypassing the legislative process. He has fought back against the damaging ideology of identity politics. By defunding racial diversity training and removing Title IX regulations in colleges, Trump has reaffirmed the once non-controversial belief that there is nothing wrong with being born white or male. Historic peace deals between Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates that normalize relations put the region on a path of stability and cohesion. He pulled America out of the unfavorable Paris Accord and Iran nuclear deals left by the Obama legacy, one which legitimized a terrorist nation who actively seek to harm America, and one that gave exclusive economic benefits to countries like China and India, while also destroying American jobs at home. Trump has proven himself to be a capable leader whose policies elevate all Americans and support all those who cherish Western values and democracy. He deserves another term as president. And for those reasons, you should support Donald Trump for president on November 3rd.